Hi, I'm Mike Sheehy, Cloud Transformation Architect with Nutanix. Today we're going to talk about the acceleration of your cloud adoption with Nc2 Nutanix Cloud Clusters. It's no secret that hybrid cloud is the preferred operating model. You can see here in the Flexera 2021 State of the Cloud report that 78% of the respondents chose hybrid cloud as the preferred operating model. 19% chose public cloud only, and 2% chose the private cloud only option. In both cases of public cloud and hybrid cloud, there are three common questions that customers ask us. How do I get to cloud faster? How do I get to cloud cheaper? And how do I get to cloud with less risk? Nutanix bridges public-private edge with a unified cloud experience. We built a true hybrid cloud platform that allows our customers to act on the promises of a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud consumption of applications and services that empower their business and deliver outcomes. We do this with predictable cost, high performance, greater control, while leveraging the public cloud of elasticity, agility, ease of use, and choice, and having the ability to consume the cloud services, providing a unified hybrid cloud model. There are many considerations when moving to public cloud. Let's talk about this from an application perspective. In the beginning, you look at your applications and you want to go through the 6 R's, right? And the 6 R's really are around, do I retain, rehost, retire, refactor, re-architect, re-platform? And the reality is it really comes down to 2 or 3 of those things, right? Do I move to a SaaS model, right, with applications? Do I lift and shift my applications? Do I leave them on-prem as is for my legacy applications? Or do I refactor, taking a application or a group of applications and then refactor them into more of a cloud-native framework? So going through the decision, you looked at applications traditionally. I want to move applications as is. This is called lift and shift, meaning I'm going to pick my VMs up and I'm going to migrate them into public cloud using the native cloud services such as Nc2 or Azure VMs. The second thing that we see customers look at is moving to cloud native, right? For the agility around application delivery, new customer experiences, around application development, etc. And sometimes folks look at this as an on-prem offering or a mixture of the two. If you do refactor, you have to look at, okay, if I'm refactoring and I go to more of a cloud native approach, I have to look at cloud provider specific changes if I move this to the cloud. Some folks look at new applications as going cloud native versus legacy, and I see this a lot at customers, where customers say, okay, the older legacy applications or applications that sit there and we're going to retain, we're either going to move them to the public cloud as is in a lift and shift method, and any new service or application that we build will be built cloud native. And then there's the refactoring process. Do I look at legacy applications? Do I refactor those and move them into a cloud native model in the public cloud? The reality is that refactoring is not a trivial process and takes a long time, whereas lift and shift takes a shorter amount of time. And this is where we see the adoption of public cloud services. If you look and see in public cloud like Azure or AWS or GCP, it's the native virtual compute, native storage that goes along with that as the most popular services, because customers believe that lift and shift model is getting into the cloud and getting the benefits of public cloud. The problem with that model is that it's very, very expensive. So how does Nutanix help with the 3 things I talked about? How do we get there faster, cheaper, and at less risk? Nutanix can accelerate public cloud by leveraging Nc2 or Nutanix Cloud Clusters and smart migration technology without the need to refactor. So for your lift and shift workloads, we allow greater time to value to get to public cloud faster at a less overall TCO versus native public cloud services. And we still do this and provide predictable cost, high performance, greater control, while still leveraging the benefits of public cloud around elasticity, agility, choice, and still being able to leverage public cloud services. Nc2 provides consistent operations across clouds. Your Nutanix software is in your cloud account, manage infrastructure, applications, data, anywhere our management construct will manage for consistent experience. and still providing that agility and scaling global infrastructure. You're still able to meet performance SLAs similar to on-prem by providing predictable Nutanix HCI resilience, efficiency, and performance, and still easily deploy and manage with cloud networking integration, which we'll demonstrate here in a few minutes. And then we also provide investment protection and freedom from lock-in. The ability to migrate across clouds with no retooling or refactoring in a similar management construct is very, very appealing to a lot of customers, and this is why this is becoming a very popular option. Also, with the advent of license portability, we're able to actually deliver licensing and have them become portable across clouds, multi-cloud, or on-prem environments. Now, I want to go back to performance SLAs because it's extremely important, right? So, performance SLAs similar to on-prem versus native cloud services like EC2 or Azure VM or Azure Compute. The reality is that when you look at what Nutanix or what the cloud provides, they're forcing you into t-shirt sizing or instance sizing. In the case of Nutanix, it's very similar to your on-prem solution where you're getting maximum consolidation, you're getting all the benefits of PCIe, NVMe-based storage performance, but also the resiliency and efficiency that Nutanix provides from a data reduction perspective, data protection perspective, etc., that you don't get with the public cloud natively. Okay, and that's the difference. When you're forced into instance sizing, you're being charged heavily on lift and shift workloads due to storage performance requirements, no data reduction, compute requirements that you have to fit into versus right size. So what does this result in? It results in the fact that Nutanix can accelerate your journey to public cloud, doing it faster. We'll show you that here in a few minutes. More securely, we adhere to current security and governance because it's very similar to what you're doing on-prem today. It's cheaper than native cloud for the reasons I talked about with instance sizing and what we call micro waste, where you can right size and get maximum consolidation, still getting that great performance, as well as using data reduction built within the platform, and you're doing this at less risk. All right, let's get into the demo. Okay, in this demonstration, we're going to show you Nutanix Cloud Clusters as it relates to AWS. Okay, we do support AWS and we support Azure. Okay, but this demonstration will really be around how do I migrate from my on-prem solution into Nutanix clusters. This means I'm not even required to have Nutanix on-prem. I'm just lift and shifting workloads off of VMware into Nutanix into the cloud. You can see here I have a small demo environment running a virtual machine we call Web 1 Nc2 running vSphere 7 Update 2. It's also running, as you can see here, in a vSAN data store. So this is not VMware running on Nutanix. This is a VMware solution. And from this solution, we're going to migrate this application, lift and shift, into Nc2 very, very easily. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. The first thing we need to do is log into the Nc2 portal. Within this portal, I can actually deploy my cluster. Very, very simple. So after I match up and I sync up my cloud account for AWS, I'm now able to actually create a cluster. So let's do that. So as we go through the create a cluster workflow, I can choose general purpose. I click next. Within here, I input my information. Okay, so we'll talk about Nc2. We'll name it Nc2 demo. I choose a cloud provider AWS. I choose my region, Ohio, and I hit next. From here, I can choose my bare metal instance types. You can see here I have 4 bare metal instance types I can choose from. In this case, I'm only going to run a 1-node cluster, so it has no resiliency. This is only for demo purposes, so I can do that. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the Z1D metal to 1 host, and I'm going to change my replication factor to 1. We'll hit next. In the networking construct, Nc2 cluster is deployed in a VPC. So in this case, I'm using an existing VPC, and in most production cases, this is what will happen. You will build your VPCs according to your standards, etc. And we don't want, to basically do that for you. We want you guys to build your landing zone. Now, in the case of a simplified deployment where you want to create a VPC, we can do that for you. I wouldn't suggest that. I would only suggest this for test dev purposes. But in your case, in production, we want to basically look at using existing VPC. You can see here I have MS Lab AWS outlined, and I have a subnet, a management subnet for the cluster. and an existing key pair matched to my account. So let's hit next here. Now I'm going to choose my Nutanix software version. I choose the latest. I'll choose Ultimate for my tier. And I'm going to restrict my access from the internet into the management portal for Nutanix. I don't want any access coming in from the internet. I have a VPN connected from my lab into my AWS VPC in the US East 2 region in Ohio. And so I only want to be able to access that from my internal network. I can also apply user-defined tags if you'd like. Maybe you have a cost center you want to apply this to and track. You can actually do that here. And I can actually schedule a cluster termination. In this case, I will do that because actually when I build this, I want it to be destroyed. But in a production use case, you wouldn't do this. You wouldn't schedule a cluster termination. What's nice about this is you can use this for demonstration or development use cases where you need to stand up infrastructure quickly and you don't need to retain the information, so you could tear it down quickly as well. So we'll hit next. And now you have a summary here of what I'm going to deploy, what VPC it's in, management subnet, software version, etc. It actually checks my cloud account and looks at my quotas, make sure my quota is sufficient. It is. And then I hit create. So now you see my cluster is running here. You can see it's called US East 2A. You can see that's under my organization, my cloud account. It's in AWS. It's in the Ohio region, one host, and you can see here that it's running. Just to go over a few things within the Nc2 portal, I can look at an audit trail to see exactly what's happening with this cluster. You can see here that I have resume and hibernate. What does that mean? So Nutanix has this unique technology, and it's unique to the industry, where we can actually hibernate the cluster within AWS. So what does that mean? That means it takes a snapshot of the data on your cluster and it backs it up to S3. So using S3, basically copies the data over to S3 bucket, and what happens then is it basically evacuates the host and puts the bare metal instance back into the global pool for other customers to leverage, so you're not being charged that compute. Okay, so from that perspective, what you're doing is you're putting the cluster in hibernate, taking a snapshot of your data. Now you've retained the cluster state and the state of your data at the time of hibernation, right? That way, if you want to go back in and resume the cluster will actually be resumed, and then the data will be rehydrated back into the cluster for your use at that given point in time. So customers always ask me, why would I use this? Well, it's great for test dev environments where you don't need to have it running all the time. It's also great for seasonal workloads, right? So we have customers who require additional capacity at different times of the year, especially like in retail, for example, or at the end of the month for other customers where they maybe have jobs they need to run or things that need to run. They need infrastructure for that. So very easily they can resume the cluster back to the state it was in without losing any data. There's also, of course, the terminate. You can update capacity, so I can update the capacity and add nodes to scale the cluster, and I can update the configuration, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the cloud account. And now when I click into this, I can see that I have the information about my cluster. And I'll just expand this so it's easier to see. So you can see that it's running the cluster ID here. The cloud provider is AWS. My account, my cloud account ID is in Ohio. My cluster status is active. And now I can actually go into the cluster and actually use it. Okay, so as I go to the Prism Central, which is the management construct for Nutanix, you can see here in the lower left-hand corner, I have a cluster quick access widget. One is US East 2A and US East New York. Don't worry about the US East New York. That's my on-prem Nutanix cluster. We're not talking about that today. We're really focused on US East 2A, which is the cluster running within AWS. Okay, so what we've done is we've installed the Move Migration Appliance, which is a tool that we provide free of charge. And you can see here that this Move tool is installed in the cluster here. The IP address is 192.168.60.82, so let's log into that. So now I'm logged into the Move Migration tool. You can see here I've selected my environments. One is the vCenter, which is this vCenter here with this VM that we're going to migrate. The other is the Prism Central interface, which contains two clusters, one on-prem and one on NC2. We're going to really focus on moving the VM from vCenter here to the NC2 cluster. So the first thing we're going to do is create a migration plan. So when we create a migration plan, we're going to name it. So we'll just call this Web 1. We'll hit proceed. We'll select the source, which is the vCenter. The target will be the Prism Central, and the target cluster will be US East 2A. The target container, what a container is basically the storage on the NC2 cluster. We'll choose the default container, and we'll click Next. Here you can see that it's done an inventory of the vCenter server. You can see here there is 6 virtual machines running on this vCenter server. The one we're going to focus on is Web 1 NC2. So let's click the plus sign here, and we're adding this to the migration plan. Now we're going to select the network configuration at the target, right? So we're going to actually move this to the target network. The server network was the name of the network on the source in vCenter, and the target network is the name of the network in the NC2 cluster. You can optionally choose a test network for crash consistent testing of your VMs prior to migration if you'd like, which would be a non-routable isolated network. But in this case, we're going to bypass this. So now it's checking capacity of the target cluster for the available resources for the migration. Okay, so we're actually going to use the automatic preparation mode. You can choose manual if you'd like, but what we're going to do is we're going to choose automatic to make this easy. And we're going to put the credentials in for the Linux VM. In my case, it's going to be root. I know we're not supposed to use root, but this is just for demo purposes. Or you can use an actual key file, a PEM file to authenticate as well for Linux. I'll choose the default time zone. Here you can see a list of options. In this case, I'm not going to retain the static IP address. I'm actually going to move this to a DHCP, which is on a different network within the NC2 cluster on AWS. So I'm going to uncheck that box. And I'm going to choose to uncheck uninstall VMware tools on the target VM. So what you can do is this is basically an activity post-migration where VMware tools will automatically be installed upon the migration into NC2. So I'm just going to uncheck this in the interest of saving time. We can also schedule data seeding. So basically what this is what time and date do I want the actual data seeding to take place. Maybe you want to do this at a different time frame. Maybe it's at night or evenings where you don't want the connectivity to be leveraged during the day for production reasons, etc. But in this case, we're just going to hit next here. So now I've validated the passwords and I've validated everything. We're only migrating one virtual machine. You can imagine that you can choose a batch of virtual machines as well for a bulk migration activity. That's something that you can do as well. You can see the source, the VM, the target environment, and then the target network mapping. So now we're going to save and start. And what's going to happen is this is going to validate the plan, and it's going to immediately go to the initial seeding of the data from the source on vCenter to the target. While we're doing that, let's take a look at this virtual machine again in vCenter. So one thing I want to tell you is that I'm running Apache Web Services on this, and it's on a 192.168.51.100. So let's copy that and just validate that Apache Web Services are running. And you can see here I'm at the Apache test page, so you know it's running. Let's go back to the Move appliance, and you can see here it's in progress. Talks about the data size, which is the amount of read data, or excuse me, the amount of data read from the source environment. And what's great about the Move appliance, right, is we're not cutting over. So this is not, a migration is not occurring right now. A cutover is not occurring. Basically what we're doing is we're just taking the initial data and moving it over to NC2 or replicating it to NC2. And then what happens with Move is every so often it'll do a seed, right? So every so often it'll do a seed of the changes, the deltas. That way it stays up to date regularly. And then when you're ready to cut over, it's a small amount of data that needs to be actually replicated and cut over. So what that does is it minimizes the time frame that the actual virtual machine is down. And in this case, it's showing in progress, so we'll just wait for this to finish. Okay, now we see the VM as the circle is done, so it's ready for cutover. You can go up here and you can see ready for cutover here. And you click this box, click the checkbox, and now you can see cutover. You can see the estimated cutover time is about 1 minute. You can see here I talked about the periodic data sync that was in progress. So basically did a full replication of the actual virtual machine. It uses vCenter change block tracking APIs to actually do the periodic data sync, to only sync the changes over a period of time. That way when you're ready to cut over, it's a minimal amount of time, minimal data change, etc., to make this process much quicker. So we're going to hit cut over, and you'll see the warning here. Once you proceed, the source VM will shut down. Virtual NICs of the source VM will be disconnected. Each source VM will have a note added with the details of the migration. So within vCenter, you'll see the note added, and we'll show you that here in a few minutes. Let's hit continue, and you can see here that the VM is now going to be cut over. We'll log back into Prism, which is the management interface for Nutanix clusters. Let's look at the virtual machines. Web 1 Nc2 is booting up. And you can see the new IP is 10.0.201.114. Let's copy this. And you can see here now I can go to my website that was running on the actual virtual machine. We added a note, VM migrated by Nutanix move, what version, what migration plan, and what date and time that was done on.